Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in Atlanta. I started Spinnaker because I feel where my passion is really in building community and sharing everything I have learned over the years and really helping others, use some of the principles that we have implemented at Pearson and in other places. So no, it's not 1920 anymore, and I think we heard a lot this morning about change and about innovation, but most of us here in the room work with large established companies who have been probably present back in 1920s, and as a result, applying some of the lean startup or agile principles or trying even to innovate in those organizations is very, very hard because they're not set up for innovation. They're set up for execution on their existing business models. They have organizational charts that are, probably very similar to what they were in 19th century. They have a workforce that's, based on 20th century teachings and skill sets, and we are in the 21st century nowadays. We are being disrupted by three guys in a garage somewhere. We are talking about new ways of working. The future, the workplace is being redefined as we speak. So how do we combine all of that? We are in this sandwich of different organizational setups, different mindsets, and people who are struggling to make sense of what's going on. On top of all the disruption that we talk about, with new technology that's emerging every single day, I think we as customers have evolved so much in the last, I would say, even couple of years, right? A few years ago, we would be happy to have Wi-Fi on the plane. Now we are complaining it's not fast enough. I couldn't finish my presentation yesterday, right? And I think companies like Amazon, True, are doing that game much better. They are very tuned into what we need as customers. Apple had the better game as well, Google. So now, if you're working for any other company in the world, you have that to deal with. So customers and their expectations that are emerging and changing every single day, and those companies that are addressing their expectations really well are your competitors, whether they're in the industry and are disrupting you or not. They're changing the behaviors of all of us, and that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And so where are we going? I read a recent study that kind of confirmed everything I've been talking for years, so that was kind of a good moment for me, but 75% of all transformation efforts in large corporates fail. 75%. Even worse, only 10% succeed if they're not holistic. So what does this mean? To be innovative, we need to change. To do innovation at scale, we are talking about changing the large enterprise that has all the challenges we've just talked about. So how do we do that? If 75% of our transformation efforts fail for various reasons, they have different characteristics of failing at the beginning because they can't get the traction, they can't get the buy-in from leadership or from the troops. They get stuck in the analysis paralysis mode of analyzing what the problem is, trying to set up something to failing because they're not putting a sustainable effort in. They're not putting budgets in place that will help them drive that transformation over a number of years, or they're just failing to scale the effort because it's nice to change one department, it's nice to do innovation on a few projects on the side, but how do you then transform that into an organization that's innovating at scale? How do you support that? And main reason all these efforts fail is us, people. We are super hard to any change efforts. Just think about your personal lives, how we react to change. Change is uncomfortable. Our mind is craving something that's predictable, right? So what we end up doing, and if you read any of the neuroscience books, is we're just repeating the pattern. We are stuck in an autopilot. We're repeating the past in the future, right? And we are basically in a program. We are not being present. And if you multiply me as an individual with 40,000 employees at Pearson, then you understand what the problem is. It's us. We are hard to change, and as a result, we are hard to support the change with our teams, and our organizations are not set up to support the change. So again, if you look at the same study, 33% of transformation efforts fail because of lack of leadership support or lack of leadership driving that change, and 38% because of the people in the organization who don't understand why they're asked to change and don't really want to support that change. And when you work with multiple clients now, as I do, these are a lot of arguments are here every single day, right? We will know if we are successful with our change or innovation effort when we get there, which means we are not really measuring an impact. A lot of them are still in denial about whether even digital is happening. All of them are in denial around who their competitors are, right? Startups are not going to disrupt us. We are too big. Our competitors are still traditional. This is never going to work here. I hear that all the time, and not just for us as a company, but even within our small department, this is never going to work because we are so special. So even if you prove that something works, someone is going to raise a hand and say, yes, it worked in that business unit, but it's never going to work for me. So how do we fight that? How do we convince our leadership and our organizations and our people to change? How do we move from innovation theater, which is happening on the side, to truly embracing that change and becoming innovators as a company? So that means changing our processes, means aligning, true, as the previous speaker was talking about, our innovation strategy to our corporate strategy, and most of all means changing the culture of the organization. We as people need to embrace that change. So when I talk about lean or agile for that matter, I don't talk about, let's implement the Spotify model, let's implement lean startup. If a client ever comes to me and says, we want to be a lean startup, I'm like, no, you don't. You cannot be a startup, and you don't want to just go and, read Eric's book and implement everything, because that's not solving your business problem. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And then look about how can we use some of the lean and agile principles to solve that problem. So we talk about this concept of lean enterprise, which means an adaptable organization that's based on continuous learning and continuous innovation to drive growth, where the culture of the organization is based on those principles. So we talk about embracing uncertainty. So being comfortable with uncertainty as people, as employees, as organizations. Means placing small bets, whether we are building products, whether we are making change in the organization. Let's start small. Let's prove whether it works first. Means being customer-centric in everything we do, from internal processes to building products and bringing them to market. It means business agility. Not just can we get the product out there in 3 months. Can we make a decision in 5 minutes instead of 6 months, right? Here are some of the companies who are trying to do that. Some are doing them better than others, but I'm sure you have plenty of examples that you can share as well. And so there is this famous Mike Tyson's quote that says, everyone has a plan until they're hit in the face. And so, when we talk about how we do transformation still, and how we set up these transformation programs, it's still very linear, and it doesn't account for the fact that life and world and our organizational paths and journeys are not linear anymore. It's not an assembly line. It's not all those Ford cars nicely, neatly, piled up. We need to change how we change. Right? We need to take a different approach. If our ultimate goal is this idea of adaptable organization that can react to any change, then our change process needs to be the same, because change takes years to embed innovation capability in the organization at scale. It's going to take 3 to 5 or more years. Everything is going to change during those 5 years. From customer expectations to your workforce, because some people will leave because they're uncomfortable to change, to your competitors. So thinking that you can come up with a plan at the beginning and execute on that plan is a bit silly nowadays, right? So how do we do that? How do we change that? And I think I'm going to give you some examples. We start with alignment. First, around what is the problem you're trying to solve. We need to align on that, because if you are running a workshop with a bunch of executives, of which some are in denial and don't even think they have a problem, some kind of understand that they have a problem and that they need to change, but not them personally, someone else in the organization, and then you have 1 or 2 that actually want to change and are trying to drive that change in the organization. How do you get them to align first on what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is our purpose? Where do we want to go? And how do we measure that, right? Metrics are really important. Measuring everything is really important. This is how we start to build that continuous loop of learning, and that first loop is always the hardest. And as you start to build that skill in the organization, it becomes easier. So start to measure everything. If it's vanity metrics to start with, great. Just start to build that muscle. So when we talk about starting with why, what is our purpose, right? Martin Luther King didn't say, I have a plan. He said, I have a vision. So we as executives in these large organizations also have a vision. We just need to be more nimble about that strategy and that vision, and to admit that we don't really know. We have some hypotheses of where do we think we should be going. We understand, hopefully, some of us, that we need to diversify our portfolio, that we need to go beyond just what's current and core and think about adjacent and transformative opportunities, because this is where the future is going to be. But how do we align then everything else we are doing to those business goals? How do we make sure that if we are transforming the organization, if we are taking this massive conglomerate of 100,000 people on that journey with us, that we are doing it for the right reasons, that we can measure that impact, that we are not saying to our troops, we'll know when we get there. No, let's come up with some hypothesis of how we're going to measure that, and let's use the data to inform whether we need to pivot on our journey or not. So start with business goals, define the transformation goals and matching those, and have some good KPIs. And review this continuously. It's not something you set up at the beginning of your transformation program and never look back. So here's an example of one of my clients. This is the early draft they've done, trying to define what they felt their business goals are, and then transformation goals that match that, and some key metrics. So for instance, they were very keen to have deeper relationship with their customers as one of their business goals. Then they looked at one of transformation goals was breaking silos in the organization so they can interact with customers and improve the customer experience. And they wanted to use NPS as a metric to measure whether that transformation goal was moving the business goal or not. So transformation is a journey, as we said. It takes 5, 6 more years. I've run this program at Pearson for 4 years, and we established a lot. But it's not a linear path. It's not something that I had a project plan at the beginning. I had some ideas of how we're going to do this. And I was running experiments. And one of the big organizational or cultural changes I was trying to embed is also bring the leadership on the journey with me, so they know not to expect the plan. So if I stand up in front of executive committee, that they're not going to say, well, you missed the project date. You said you're going to deliver X on this date. And instead, ask me what I have learned, what we have achieved, what are the outcomes, right? So the number of times I had to stand up and say, we pivoted. Our original assumptions were wrong, but this is what we have learned, and this is what we have proved, and this is the evidence, and this is what our early adopters are saying. And as a result, we are going to adjust the course, and this is what we're going to do next. So not just running the transformation in that way, but teaching the organization that this is how we are working now. We are becoming adaptable. We are changing the course based on what we are learning. We are really using data. It's also really important that we bring everyone along on the journey, that we are really not doing innovation on the side or transformation on the side, and people feel like it's happening to them when it comes finally, or we are doing 5 or 6 different transformation efforts, and if you're in a business unit and have lost 10% of your budget that year and you need to absorb all this change, you're like, I cannot do this, like go away, we'll do transformation some other time. Bringing everyone on the journey, this is where that alignment I was talking about is really important. Using the same language, making sure people understand why, what's the vision, where are we going, how we bring them on the journey, what's in it for them as well, not just for executives. It's a different story at different levels in the organization. So I have designed this kind of journey map to show that progress, and I often use it with my clients and when we workshop, and try to explain and map what the journey is. So starting with those goals, so why are we changing? That's our true north. This is what we are using to prioritize all the efforts. And then looking across 2 axes, this is kind of all the mechanics of building an ecosystem in the organization, all the processes, from applying the portfolio approach to changing how we make decisions, etc., to obviously mindset, right? People, culture, how do we change that? So we map the journey. We are thinking longer term, but we think in set of experiments. What are the next set of experiments we're going to run, maybe in the portfolio area, to prove how would this work differently in the organization, right? So starting small and iterating based on data, whatever we do, not just products, not just new services, everything. So this is an example of the lean product lifecycle we have designed at Pearson, and we took it with the same approach, right? Who are our customers? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Test it with early adopters, and based on the feedback and adoption we were seeing in the organization, that evolved over time. So, we ran a series of experiments, first with smaller number of product teams, then with number of business units, until we came up with a process that really worked, that allowed us to do the portfolio approach, that allowed us to innovate quickly, that allowed us to, allocate funds very quickly to early stage ideas so that they can move through the funnel. And that alignment and language and communication, so again, bringing people on the journey, making sure they understand their part of the process was also important. So here are some of the artifacts we used, from posters on the left side that we had in every single building, to the playbook we have designed that talked about how we build innovative products now at Pearson, to videos and materials like that. So again, bringing the organization on that journey. So sustainability is a big topic. When I did this program for 4 years, I literally worked 16, 17 hours a day. I didn't sleep, I probably didn't eat much, I never went to gym. I kind of listened to my son, but in the background, not really hearing what he was saying. And obviously it's not a sustainable effort, and we cannot continue to do this as just relying on change agents and just relying on heroes who are going to bring the organization. I think I was very silly to think that me as an individual can drag this, all the organization of 40,000 people on a journey, but I was so passionate that, that passion worked. But it has to be sustainable for us as individuals, for our teams who are working then crazy hours as well, and to the organization. There is so much change the organization can absorb at any point in time. Yes, we need to change. Yes, we need to start to innovate. Yes, we need to transform our product portfolios. Yes, we need to transform our culture. But we have to go about it in a sustainable way. We need to know that this is not going to happen overnight. So we need to start to build that muscle. We need to start investing in our people. We need to give them space to breathe and innovate and transform and change. And the organization needs to do that iteratively over time. And I don't think any of this is possible without the community. So this is where my kind of main passion is using that community, the power of us as a collective, whether it's internally in your organization, through communities of best practice and change agents and people who are doing innovation, whether it's in events like this, we need to share. No one has a blueprint yet. We are all kind of making it up as we are going along. We are trying to learn, but sharing that knowledge as a community, having a support system in place is really important. So again, a few photos from some of the community events in various companies, people sharing what's working and also what's not working, where have they failed, and how we can learn from that. And I think it is the loneliest job in the world, and I always felt like, we need a support group, and this is, one of the events where we can share openly, hopefully, and what works and what doesn't work, so not half-truths, the whole truth of how hard it is to bring our organization on that journey, from convincing our leaders to convincing our troops to, doing this on a daily basis, trying to figure out how to do it. It is lonely, and so I'm here also to recruit you to join our community. We are trying to set up this circle of transformation leaders who can contribute to the best practice and share with each other what's working, what's not working. So if you are interested, speak to me at one of the breaks and I can tell you a bit more. Thank you so much.